Hi, good day, everyone. So, today I'll be discussing our lesson three that is the issues on human development and research in child and adolescent development. So, let us first have a recap regarding the human development that we've discussed from our previous discussions, no? So, we all know that human development is a lifelong process. It involves physical, our mental, our emotional, and our social that changes from birth to adulthood. So, among all stages of life, childhood and adolescence are especially important because they are times of rapid growth and learning. So during these stages, individuals develop their personality, their identity, and the basic skills they need for adulthood. So however, studying how children and adolescents grow and develop is not simple. So, researchers face different challenges such as ethical concerns, cultural differences, and the impact of modern technology and social media. So, understanding these issues helps us improve how we study and support young people as they grow or as they go through these critical stages of life. So that's why in our discussion today, I'll be discussing some of the major issues in human development as well as in research, especially those that affect children and adolescents, and why addressing these challenges is important for their overall well being and future growth. So let's first discuss the introduction to our topic. So development is not all nature or all nurture, not all continuity and discontinuity, and no all stability or all change according to Lerner 1998 as quoted by Sandrak 2002. So this means that human development cannot be explained by only one factor. It's not just about our biological makeup or our environment. It's also not entirely a smooth, a continuous process, or a series of separate stages. People are not completely stable or constantly changing throughout life. So, development is a combination of all these aspects interacting together in a complex way. So both nature and nurture, continuity and discontinuity, stability and change characterize our lifespan development. So in other words, our development is shaped by both what we are born with, that is our genes and biology, and what we experience as we grow, that is our surroundings, our relationships, and our culture. So some parts of our development happen gradually while others occur in distinct stages or sudden changes. So these are also traits that remains consistent, like aspects of our personality, while others change over time due to our life experiences. Number three is the key to development is the interaction of nature and nurture rather than either factor alone. So this emphasizes that nature and nurture work together rather than separately. So our genes provide the foundation of who we are, but our environment helps shape how those genetic potentials are expressed. For example, a child might be born with a natural talent for music, but without exposure to instruments or encouragement from the parents. So that ability might never develop fully. So it's the combination of both that truly drives development. Next is both genes and environment are necessary for a person to exist. So this statement reminds us that one cannot exist without the other. So genes or our genes determine our biological structure, while the environment provides the conditions we need to survive and to grow. So again, without our genetic material, there would be no life. But without an environment to nurture that life, a person also cannot exist or develop properly. Next is without genes, there is no person, and without environment, there is no person. So, this quote clearly summarizes the relationship between the nature and the nurture. So it means that both are essential and inseparable in the process of human development. Our genes give us our biological identity, while our environment shapes how we live, how we learn, and adapt. So, development happens through the constant interaction between the nature and the nurture. Next is when we talk about the human development, a common question arises: if heredity and environment interact, which one has a greater influence or contributions? So the truth is, we cannot divide their effects or assign exact percentages. Like saying heredity contributes 50% and the environment contributes 50%. So the contributions of heredity and environment are not additive, meaning they don't simply add to form who we are. Instead, they work together, constantly interacting in complex ways to shape a person's growth and behavior. So, for example, the heredity provide the biological foundation, things like our physical appearance, our natural abilities, and our genetic potential. So, but the environment determines how, when, or even whether those genetic traits are expressed. So, a child might inherit a potential for high intelligence, but without proper nutrition or education or emotional support, so the potential might never be fully developed. So, in the same way, the environment can create abilities or traits that aren't supported by the heredity. So, rather than asking which one is greater, it's more accurate to say that development depends on the dynamic interaction between heredity and the environment. So one provides the possibility and the other provides the opportunity for the possibility to grow. So in short, heredity sets the foundation and the environment builds upon it. So both are equally important and work together to shape who we become. Okay, so let's now proceed to research in child and adolescent development. So research in this field focuses on understanding how the children and adolescent grow, think, feel, and behave as they move through different stages of life. So it helps us learn what factors such as the family, peers, the school, the culture, and the environment influence the development. So through research, psychologists and other experts like teachers or the school administration can better understand how experiences during childhood and adolescence shape a person's personality. Not just personality, but also behavior and overall well being. So, the knowledge gained from these studies is used to guide the parents, the teachers, the communities in supporting the healthy growth and development of young people. So, research in child and adolescent development, one of the contributors for this is teachers as consumers and users of research. So, we all know that teachers play an important role as consumers or end users of research. Because research provides a valuable information that helps the teachers and policymakers make better decisions for the benefit of learners and their families. So, by understanding and applying research findings, teachers are able to improve their teaching strategies and create learning environments that meet the needs of the students. So, of course, the second one is a well informed teacher is one who uses and integrates the most reliable and up to date research in the classroom. So, through research, teachers can make informed decisions about what to teach, how to teach, and how to address the diverse needs of their learners. So it helps evaluate which teaching methods are effective and how they can be adapted to different learning situations. Third is research is not only useful for classroom instruction, but also in guiding decisions related to educational policies, curriculum design, and teaching and learning processes. So, when teachers are guided by research, their actions and strategies are based on evidence rather than guesswork or tradition. Next is research helps teachers understand how to match their teaching with the development levels of their learners. So, for example, knowing about child and adolescent development allows teachers to choose lessons, materials, and teaching styles that are appropriate for their students' age, abilities, and interests. So, in short, to summarize this up, being consumers of research enables teachers to become reflective, become effective, and professional educators who continuously improve their practice for the success and well being of their students. Teachers as researchers. So, teachers are not only consumers of research, but also researchers themselves. So the conduct of research does not belong only to thesis and dissertation writers. It also for teachers and students who want to improve learning and teaching. So as a classroom practitioners, teachers are in the best position to observe what happens in the learning environment, identify problems, and find solutions through research. So by engaging in research, teachers develop a deeper understanding of their learners, their teaching methods, and the overall educational process. So, conducting research helps teachers make evidence based decisions, improve instructional strategies, and create a more effective and meaningful learning experiences for the students. So that is why it is important for teachers to learn how to conduct research by understanding various research principles, the methods, and the designs. So when teachers apply this in the context of child and adolescent development, they can explore how students learn best, what factors affect their behavior and performance, and also how teaching can be adapted to their development needs. So, to sum it up, being a teacher researcher means being reflective, being curious, and committed to continuous improvement. So, it allows teachers to not only to teach but also to contribute to new knowledge that can benefit both their learners and entire educational community. Next is this is one of most this is one important principle in research. This is the use of the scientific method. So this is because we all know that research is a systematic and logical process that aims to discover new knowledge or solve problems based on evidence. So the scientific methods provide a structured way for researchers to investigate questions and test ideas. It involves several key steps that is identifying problem, formulating a hypothesis, gathering data through observation or experimentations. It analyzes also the results and draws conclusions. So by following scientific method, researchers ensure that their findings are accurate, reliable, and free from personal bias. So this process helps um, research more objective and credible. Next is since scientific method is one of the most important principles in the research, According to John Dewey, there are five main steps in the scientific method. So the first step is to identify and define the problem. So this means clearly stating what issue or question the researchers wants to study. In education, for example, a teacher might notice that a student struggle to stay focused in class and decide to investigate why that happens. The second step is to determine the hypothesis. Hypothesis is also known as educated guess or a possible explanation for the problem. So it gives direction to the research. For an instance, the teacher might hypothesize that students lose focus because of a lack of engaging learning activities. The third step is to collect and analyze data. So this involves gathering information that can help test the hypothesis. So data can be collected through observations, interviews, surveys, and experiment or through test. So after collecting the data, researchers analyze it carefully to look for patterns or evidence that support or reject the hypothesis. The fourth is to formulate conclusions. So, based on the data analysis, the researcher decides whether the hypothesis was correct or not. The conclusion should answer the original research question and explain what was discovered. And finally, the fifth step is to apply conclusions to the original hypothesis. So this means using what has been learned to solve the problem or improve the situation. So in the classroom example, the teacher might apply the findings by changing their teaching methods to include more interactive or hands-on activities that keeps students engaged. So by following Dewey's five steps of scientific method, researchers and teachers can approach problems in a clear, organized, and evidence-based way, leading to better understanding and more effective solutions. So let's now proceed in discussing the research design. So this serves as the overall plan or blueprint of a study. It provides structure and direction of how research will be conducted. From identifying the problem, collecting the data, analyzing results, to drawing conclusions. So, in other words, it tells us how the entire research process will be carried out in a systematic and organized way. So researchers that are done with high level of quality and integrity provides us with valuable information about child and adolescent development. So this means that when research is conducted carefully, not just carefully, honestly, and systematically, it gives us trustworthy information about how children and adolescents grow and develop. So the high quality researches help us understand different aspects of development, such as learning, our emotions, the relationships, and the behavior. So the reliable research findings can be used by teachers, not just teachers. It can be used by the parents and policymakers to make a better decisions that support the healthy growth and well-being of young people. Next is to be able to conduct quality research. It is important that you know various research designs and different data gathering techniques used by developmental researchers. So this point emphasizes that conducting good research requires knowing the different types of research designs and data collection method. So a research design, as we've mentioned earlier, serves as the overall plan or structure of study. So it tells us how the research will be carried out. It guides the researcher in choosing the right methods for gathering and analyzing data. So, for example, some studies observe children over a long period of time, while others compare different age groups or use experiments to test specific ideas. So, by understanding the research design and techniques, it helps the researchers collect accurate and meaningful data. So, it also ensures that the study is systematic, ethical, and aligned with the goals of developmental research. To sum it up, it is knowing how to properly design a study is the foundation of producing a high quality and useful research in child and adolescent development. So one type of um, research design using in studying the child and adolescent development is what we call case study. So a case study is an in-depth look at an individual. It involves collecting detailed information about a single person's life and experiences to better understand their development. So, researchers may examine the individual's background, behavior, thoughts, and emotions through interviews, observations, and other records. The strength of the case studies is it provides rich and detailed information about a person. So it allows researchers to explore an individual's fears, hopes, fantasies, traumatic experiences, bringing family relationships and health. All of these details help psychologists gain deeper understanding of the person's unique development. So case studies are especially useful when studying unusual cases or when researchers want to learn more about experiences that cannot be easily replicated in the laboratory. So, however, there are also weaknesses to this method, no? So, researchers must be careful when generalizing findings from a case study because each individual is unique with their own genetic makeup and life experiences that no one else shares. So this means the results of one case may not apply to everyone. So another limitation according to Suntrack 2002 is that case studies can involve judgments that lack reliability since different psychologists might interpret the same observations differently. So there is often no way to verify whether others would reach the same conclusion. So to sum it up, the case study methods give us a valuable detailed insights into one person's development, but it should be used carefully as its findings cannot always be generalized to others. So, for example, no, imagine a psychologist or a teacher studying a child who shows exceptional artistic talent at a very young age. So, through case study, the psychologist would gather detailed information about the child's background. So they might interview the parents, the teachers, observe how the child draws, and he or she will take note how often the child practices or what motivates them. So by analyzing all this information, the researcher could better understand how the child's talents develop, whether it came mainly from natural ability or family encouragement or simply exposure to art materials. However, because this case focuses on one specific child, the findings cannot automatically be applied to all children. So another child with similar exposure might not develop the same level of talent. So this is why case studies are valuable for understanding individual development in depth. but they are limited when it comes to generalizing results for a larger groups. Okay po. Next is correlational study. So this is one of the important type of research design. So a correlational study is a research design that focuses on finding associations or relationships between two or more variables. So it helps researchers see whether changes in one factor are related to changes in another. So for example po, you are examining whether the amount of time students spend studying is related to their academic performance. So the strength of correlational study is that it allows researchers to make predictions. So, as Kantowitz and colleagues during 2001 cited by Santrak 2002 explain the stronger the correlation between two events, the more accurately we can predict one from the other. For example, if research finds a strong correlation between a regular reading habits and a high language scores, teachers can reasonably predict the um that encouraging students to read more could lead to a better performance in language subjects. So, however, the weakness of this type of research is that it does not involve manipulating variables. So, meaning researchers do not control or change any conditions because of this correlation does not prove causation. Even if two things are related, one does not necessarily cause the other. So for example, um, students who eat breakfast regularly may have higher grades, but that doesn't mean breakfast causes good grades. There could be other factors such as sleeps, family support, or study habits. So, to sum it up, the correlational studies are useful for identifying relationships and making predictions, but always remember they cannot determine the cause and effect relationships. I will give you another example. So, a researcher wants to find out if there is a relationship between the social media used and the self-esteem among the adolescents. So they survey a group of students and record how many hours they spend on social media each day. And then after that, they compare with their self-esteem scores. If the study shows that the higher social media use is linked to lower self-esteem, it means there is a correlation, but not necessarily that the social media causes low self-esteem. So other factors can contribute, like peer pressure or body image issues. It might influence the result. Next is the experimental research design. So this is used to determine the cause and effect relationships between the variables. So in this method, the researcher deliberately manipulates one variable called the independent variable to see if it causes a change in another variable. This is known as the dependent variable. So this design relies on the controlled methods, random assignment, and the manipulation of variables to test the hypothesis. So the strength of the experimental method is that it is the most reliable way to establish cause and effect because the researcher controls and changes specific variables while keeping other factor constant. It becomes possibly to identify which factors truly influence the outcome. For example, you experimented or you experimented whether a new teaching strategy directly improves the student learning performance. So So, however, the experimental method also has several weaknesses. So, first, it has limited to what is observable, testable, and manipulable. So, meaning it cannot easily study uh, um, emotional complex personal experiences because it cannot controlled in a lab setting. Second is failure to achieve randomizations or not properly assigning participants randomly. This can make the study less representative of a larger population. So, this limits how much the findings can be generalized to other people. Third is experimentation involving humans is influenced by internal factors such as our mood, the motivation, or environment, which may affect the results. And finally, another limitations is that the participants may change their behavior simply because they know they are being observed. This is known as the Hawthorne effect, and it can influence the accuracy of the results. So, to sum it up, the experimental research is the best method for finding the cause and effect relationships, but it must be done carefully to avoid bias, to ensure the ethical standards, and maintain valid results. So, for example, I will give you example regarding on when or how to use the experimental research design. If you want to know whether using interactive digital learning tools helps improve students' math performance. So, as a teacher, you will divide the class into two groups. So one group uses the digital tools, while the other group uses traditional textbooks. So after a few weeks, both groups take the same test. If the group using digital tools scores higher, the researcher can conclude that the teaching method caused the improvement because all other conditions were controlled. Next is another type of research design used in studying child and adolescent development is the naturalistic observation. So, a naturalistic observation is a research method that focuses on observing children's behavior in their natural settings, so such as home, in school, or on the playground. So, in this type of research, the researcher does not intervene or manipulate any variables. The researcher simply watches and records what happens naturally. So, this technique is often used when laboratory research would be naturalistic, too expensive, or might affect how the subjects behave because children might act differently in lab than in their normal environment. So, naturalistic observation helps capture their true and spontaneous behavior. One of the strengths of the naturalistic observation is that it allows the researcher to directly observe subjects in a real life settings. This provides a more accurate and genuine understanding of how children or adolescent behave in everyday situations. So it helps the researchers see how they interact with others or to solve the problems and respond to the real world experiences. Next is if my strength ang natural observation, it has also weaknesses. So one of the disadvantage is that it can be difficult to determine the exact cause of a behavior. So, since the researcher is only observing and not controlling the variables. So, for example, if a child becomes aggressive on the playground, it's hard to tell whether that behavior was caused by frustration, caused by peer influence, or something else. So, another limitation is that the researcher cannot control the outside variables, such as changes in the environment or the unexpected events that may affect the behavior. So, these uncontrolled factors can make it harder to interpret the results accurately. So, I want you to remember that if you are going to use the naturalistic observation, this gives you valuable insight into a real life behavior, but it also has limits when it comes to identifying the exact causes of what they observe. Ano po? So, for example po, no, a research or at you as a teacher, you want to observe a group of kindergarten, so the children during free play at the school. So as a researcher, you quietly watches the children interact, share their toys, and handle conflicts. So no instructions or changes are made during the observation. So you as a researcher simply records what naturally occurs. So from these observations, the researcher or you as a researcher can better understand children's social development and peer relationships in a real world setting. Next is longitudinal study. So a longitudinal study involves studying and following the same group of individuals over a long period of time. So sometimes for several years or even decades. So in this type of research, data is collected from the same participants repeatedly at different points in their lives. So this allows the researchers to observe how people change and develop over time. So the strength of this research design is that it enables the researchers to record and monitor developmental trends. So through observation of the same individuals across different stages. So the researchers can see how early experiences or habits or behaviors mm, affects later outcomes. So for example, they might study how children reading habits in elementary school influence their academic performance in high school. So, one of the weaknesses of these research design is that they are expensive and time consuming. So, since the research can last for many years and it requires continuous monitoring and data collection. So, another problem is that over time, participants may drop out of the study. So, they might move to a new place, become ill, lose interest, or simply stop participating. So, this can reduce the number of subjects and affect the accuracy of the findings. So, lastly, when some participants drop out, those who remain might be different from those who left, which can contribute as a bias results. So, for example, um, if only the most motivated individuals stay in the study, the final outcomes may no longer represent the original group. So always remember in longitudinal studies, it provides um, valuable insights into how people develop and change over time. But they require a lot of time, a lot of efforts and resources to complete successfully the study. So next po is we have also a cross-sectional research design. So this research strategy in which individuals of different ages are compared at one point in time. So instead of following the same group for years, researchers collect data from various age groups. For example, children, adolescents, and adults all at once. So this allows them to identify age-related differences and developmental patterns without waiting for the participants to grow older. So one of the strengths of this design is that it allows researchers to observe and record developmental trends quickly. Because the study looks at different age groups simultaneously, it can provide immediate results about how development varies across ages. So another advantage is that the researcher does not have to wait years for the same individuals to grow up, which saves time and effort compared to longitudinal studies. So, however, the cross sectional studies also have some weaknesses. One limitation is that they cannot show. I'm so sorry. I'm not be able to change what is written here in the cross sectional, but um ayun, but to discuss it to you, one of the weaknesses is that it cannot show how individual um actually change over time. Ano po? So since different people are compared rather than the same ones followed through the years. So this means that any differences found between age groups might not truly reflect developmental change. They could be caused by the other factors like culture, education, or life um, life experience. So, in some cases din naman po, the cross sectional studies can also be costly and time consuming. So, same with the longitudinal, especially when you are trying to look for a larger groups of participants from the different age categories need to be recruited and assessed. Additionally, since this method relies on comparing different groups, it may not account for all individual differences within each group. So always remember when you are going to use the cross-sectional research, it is an effective way to study age related differences quickly, but it cannot fully explain how or why individuals change over time. Next is we have also what we call the sequential research design. So, this according to Skill 1993, cited by Soundtrack 2002, this sequential research design combines both the cross-sectional and longitudinal approach to better understand the lifespan development. So this study usually starts with a cross-sectional study where individuals of different ages are assessed at one point in time. Then, after several months or years, the same individuals are tested again, and this is the longitudinal aspect of the design. So, at this later time, the researcher might also include a new group of participants at each age level to compare with the original group. So, this combination helps the researchers observe both the differences between age groups and the changes that occur within the same individuals over time. So, one of the strengths of this design is that it allows researchers to record and monitor developmental trends in a more complete way. So it provides information that would be impossible to obtain from using only one design that is cross sectional or the longitudinal methods. So by combining both, researchers can separate true developmental changes from differences caused by generational or cultural factors. Next is we have also weaknesses for these methods. So it is complex, expensive, and time consuming. So because it involves multiple groups and repeated measures over several years, it requires a lot of planning, the resources, and commitment from both researchers and participants. So I want you to remember when we are talking about the sequential research design, it offers the most comprehensive view of development, but it demands a great effort, a great time, funding to carry out successfully. Next is this is also one of the another valuable type of research design, that is the action research. So this is a reflective process of progressive problem solving. So usually led by individuals working with others in teams or as part of the community of practice. So the main goal here is to improve the way issues are addressed and to find better solutions to real life problems. In the context of teaching, action research often begins with teachers' own questions and reflections about their everyday classroom experiences. So, for example, a teacher might notice that students are losing interest during lessons and decides to try a new teaching strategy to increase engagement. So the teacher then observes, collect data, and reflects on the so I don't know where I end my discussions, but let me just reiterate again. So when we are talking about the action research, it simply begins with teachers' own questions and reflections. So for example, as a teacher, you might notice that the students are losing interest during lessons and decide to try new teaching strategy. So to increase the motivation and the engagement during the classroom management. So now the teacher observes, collects data, and reflects on the outcome. So that's the action research practice. So one of the major strengths of action research is that it is appropriate on a particular setting when the goal is to create positive changes and gather information about both the process and the outcomes of strategies used. So it allows the researchers to use different methods such as surveys, interviews, or observations to get the best results as possible. So another strength is the stakeholders are involved throughout the process. So, who are those stakeholders? The teachers, the students, the administrators, and even the parents can take part. So, this collaboration increases the likelihood of making real, meaningful improvements in practice since everyone contributes to the change. However, again, action research also has some weaknesses. It usually takes place in within a single organizations or classroom, which means the findings are difficult to generalize to other schools or contexts. What works in one school may not work the same way in another. Another limitation is that if the participants do not fully understand or feel involved in the research, the conflicts may arise. So this could happen between the researcher and the participants or even among members of the organization. So therefore, it's very important for all the participants to feel ownership and cooperation throughout the process. So I want you to remember in action research, it is a powerful tool for teachers and practitioners to reflect, to improve, and bring positive change with their own environments. But it must be carried out carefully and collaboratively to be truly effective. So let's now proceed with the data gathering techniques. So we're done discussing different types of research design. Now we're going to discuss different data gathering techniques. So when we say data gathering techniques, it refers to various methods that the researchers use to collect information that will help them answer their research questions or test the hypothesis. So the quality of the data collected directly affects the accuracy and reliability of the research findings. So again, a data gathering is like a data collection. So it is not just about gathering information only. It's about doing it systematically, ethically, and accurately. Ano po? So let's now proceed to the different types of um, data gathering techniques. Number one is this is one of the most common data gathering techniques. This is the observation. So it involves watching and recording people's behavior in order to understand how they act and respond in different situations. So observation can be made in either laboratories or in a natural settings. When you're doing a naturalistic observation, behavior is studied in a real world environment, such as classroom, the homes, or in playgrounds, where the participants or the individuals act naturally without interference from the researchers. So, on the other hand, laboratory observation takes place in a more controlled setting, where the researchers can closely monitor a specific behaviors under certain conditions. So, observations help researchers collect first-hand information about how children and adolescents behave, interact, and learn in their daily lives. So, it provides valuable insight that may not always be captured through test or questionnaire. So, for example, you as a researcher, you might observe preschool children during free play in their classroom. So the researcher quietly notes how the children share toys, just like our example earlier. So you observe them in the natural interactions, so you as a researcher can better understand their social and emotional development. Next is physiological measures. So here naman po, it involves collecting data on the physical or biological indicators of development. So these indicators may include like the heart rate, the hormonal levels, bone growth, body weight, or the brain activity. So researchers use these measures to understand how the body and the brain function during different stages of growth and how these biological factors relate to behavior, the emotions, or learning. So, this method is especially useful when studying how the body responds to stress, how the brain develops, or how hormones influence the behavior during the childhood and adolescence. So, the physiological data provide the information that cannot always be seen through observation or self-report. So, for example, a researcher studying stress in children might measure their heart rate or the cortisol levels before and after giving a classroom presentation. So, by comparing these results, the researcher can see how children's bodies physically respond to stressful situations and how those reactions may differ by age or temperament. Next is we have the standardized tests. Um, these are the prepared assessments designed to measure an individual's performance in specific areas, such as the intelligence, academic achievement, language skills, or personality. So these tests are administered and scored in a consistent manner. So meaning that all participants take the test under the same conditions and instructions. This consistency allows researchers to compare the results of different individuals or group fairly. So, for example, you might use as a researcher a standardized reading comprehension test to compare the reading levels of a 10-year-old students in different schools. Because everyone takes the same test under the same conditions, the researchers can accurately assess how students perform relative to one another and to establish developmental standards. Next is the interviews and questionnaires. So this is widely used as a data gathering also, no? So this technique involve asking participants to provide information about themselves based on a set of questions prepared by the researcher. So the data can be collected in different ways. It can be through printed questionnaires, telephone calls, through email, through face-to-face interviews, or even the online surveys. So both the interview and the questionnaires are conducted using standardized procedures, meaning that all participants are asked the same questions in the same manner. So this helps ensure that the information gathered is consistent and reliable. So in interviews, researchers often interact directly with participants, allowing for deeper insights and clarifications if needed. In questionnaires, on the other hand, are usually written or digital forms that can reach a large number of participants quickly and efficiently. So, this technique is useful for collecting data on people's opinions, experiences, attitudes, and even the behaviors and the feelings. So, um, these are the things that may not always be visible through observation or testing. So, for example, if you're interested in studying the adolescent stress that might distribute an online questionnaires asking students about their school's workload, sleep habits, or the coping strategies. So each student will answer the same set of questions. So the researcher can analyze the responses to identify the common sources of stress and pattern in how teenagers manages it. Next is the life history records. So this refer to the information collected about a person's lifetime chronology of events and activities. So these records provide a detailed picture of an individual's life over time and often include data on education or work, family, and residence, such as the health or a place of residence. So this type of information can come from a various sources such as public records, school and medical files, the historical documents or interviews with the individual or the family members. So the researchers use these records to trace patterns of development, life transitions, and experiences that shape a person's growth over the years. So the life history records are particularly useful in developmental studies because they allow researchers to connect past experiences with present behavior and outcomes. So, for example, no, you're studying a career development might collect life history records of an adults, including their educational background, employment history, and family life. So, by analyzing these records, the researcher can identify how early educational experiences or family circumstances influence their career path and achievements later in life. So, we are done with the different types or different kinds of data gathering techniques. So now let's talk about the ethical principles. So the ethical principles, as we all know, this serves as the foundation for conducting research in a responsible and respectful way. So they ensure that the rights and the safety and well-being of all participants, especially children and adolescents, are always protected throughout the research process. So in developmental research kasi, ethics is very important because the participants are often young. They are vulnerable and may not fully understand the nature of the study. That's why the researchers must act with honesty, sensitivity, and care in every step, from planning the study to collecting the reporting data. So we have here some ethical um, principles with regards sa research involving the children and adolescent from the National Association for the Education of Young Children, or the NEYC. So these are their ethical consideration for researchers. Number one is research procedures must never harm children physically or psychologically. So children are vulnerable participants. So as as a researchers must make sure that their studies do not cause any stress, fear, or discomfort. So the well-being of the child must always come before the goals of the research. Second, children and their families have the right to full information about the research in which they may participate, including possible risks and benefits. Their decision to participate must be based on what is called informed consent. There must be informed consent procedures with research participants. So, in short, children and their families have the right to full information about the research in which they may participate. This includes clear details about the purpose of the study, what will happen during the research, and any possible risk or benefits. So the families must understand what the research involves before agreeing to take part of it. Third is um this law is I'm so sorry. Children's questions about research should be answered in truthful um manner in a ways that children can understand. Researchers must be honest and clear in their information. So another pala before I proceed to the third part regarding the informed consent, no. So when we talk about the informed consent, this means that the researcher must obtain permission from the child's parents and guardians, and when possible, the child's own agreement before including them in the study. So, informed consent ensures that participation is voluntary and the families have the freedom to withdraw from the study at any time without negative consequences. So, for the third is that um it's also important to consider the honesty and the clear communication when doing your research. So children are very or a natural curious, and they may have questions about the research they are participating in. So as a researcher or a teachers, it is our responsibility to answer the questions truthfully and in a way they can easily understand. So we must always be honest and clear when explaining what will happen during the study. So making sure the children feel safe, respected, and not pressured to participate. So in addition, for the fourth one, there should always respect for privacy and confidentiality. So this means that any information gathered from children or their families must be kept private. Researchers should never share personal information or reveal the identity of the participants in reports, discussions, or presentations. So instead, researchers can use codes or pseudonyms to protect the participants' identities. So, maintaining confidentiality not only protects the children's rights, but also build trust between the researchers and the participants. So, in short, the ethical research with children requires truthfulness, clarity, respect for privacy at all times. This principle simply helps us to ensure that the children feel safe, valued, protected throughout the entire research process. So let's now discuss another important law that guides the researchers, especially those working with children and families. So this is the Data Privacy Act of 2012 under the RA 10173. So this law was passed in the Philippines in 2012 with the goal of protecting the fundamental human right to privacy of communication while still allowing the free flow of information to support innovation, the learning, and the national development. So, in research, this law reminds us that when we collect personal information such as names, address, contact details, or any sensitive data, we must do so only for a declared, a specific, and legitimate purpose. So this means researchers should clearly explain why the information is being collected and how it will be used. The law emphasizes that consent must always be obtained from the participant or from the parents and guardians in the case of minors before collecting any personal data. So, this ensures that the participants are aware of and agree to how their information will be used. So, in short, the Data Privacy Act of 2012 protects individuals from misuse of their personal data and helps researchers maintain trust, transparency, and ethical integrity in their studies. So, for example po, no, um, imagine a group of teachers conducting a research study on students' online learning habits in their school. So, before they begin collecting data, they first prepare a consent form that explains the purpose of the study, the type of information they will collect, how the data will be used and protected, and the participation is voluntary and can be withdrawn at any time. So, they then asked for a written consent from both parents and students before gathering any personal informations. So as collected are stored securely dapat. And when they write their research report, they use codes or pseudonyms instead of real names to protect the student's identity. So by following these steps, the researcher comply with the Data Privacy Act of 2012, ensuring that participants' personal data remain private, protected, and used only for legitimate research purposes. What if you violate the Data Privacy Act of 2012 or the RA 10173? So it carries, remember this has, guys, it carries serious legal and ethical consequences for individuals and organizations involved in research. When a researcher or institutions collects, shares, or uses personal information without proper consent or fails to protect the privacy of the participants, they are violating the fundamental rights guaranteed under this law. So, yung meron tayong tinatawag na National Privacy Commission na they enforce the Data Privacy Act. You can have a penalty such as fines and imprisonment depending on the severity of the offense. For example, you unauthorized processing of the personal information can result in imprisonment ranging from 1 to 3 years, and you will have a fines between 500,000 to 2 million. So, yun po. No. So let's now proceed to the impact of teachers' research involvement on teachers. So the teachers' involvement in research has the impact on their professional growth and teaching practice. So, when teachers actively participate in research, they tend to become more reflective and thoughtful about their own classroom strategies and decisions. So, they begin to question what works, what doesn't, and why. And this leads to more intentional and evidence based teaching. So, research involvement also help teachers to become more critical and analytical thinkers. So this allows them to examine students' needs and learning outcomes from multiple perspectives. So also teachers who engage in research are usually more open to new ideas and innovations, and they develop a stronger commitment to continuous professional development. So this means they're not only improving their own teaching methods, but also contributing to the overall improvement of the educational practices in their schools and community. So in short, the research involvement empowers teachers to become active learners themselves. So it contributes to their constant growing, improving, and striving to provide the best education for their students. Next is participating in teacher research also help teachers become more deliberate in their decision making and actions in the classroom. So instead of relying solely on habit or routine, they begin to base their teaching strategies on evidence and reflection drawn from their own observations and findings. So through research, teachers learn to analyze what happens in their classrooms and make informed adjustment to improve student learning. So according to Mills 2000 and Stringer 2007, teacher research develops and professional dispositions of lifelong learning and reflective and mindful teaching and self transformation. So this means that the teachers continually seek to improve their craft, think critically about their teaching practices, and adapt to the changing needs of their students. So, in essence, being involved in research transform teachers into active learners, the professionals who grow through inquiry, reflection, and continuous process. Next is engaging in teacher research at any level may lead to rethinking and reconstructing what it means to be a teacher or teacher educator, and consequently, the way teachers relate to children and students. So, um, this shift in perspective influences how they understand their role and how they relate to their students. So they become more emphatic, observant, and responsive to the unique needs and experiences of the child. So, teacher research also highlights an important truth that learning to teach is inherently connected to learning to inquire. So, as a teachers ask questions, seek answers, and reflect on their findings, they continue to grow both professionally and personally. So, in this way, research become a powerful tool for teachers to refine their teaching philosophy, improve their classroom practices, and strengthen their relationship with their students. So, for your performance task, again, this will set as your attendance for our discussion for today. Please don't forget to write your name first, the cluster, and your answer. Because sometimes some of the students just comment their names and their clusters without answers. So that is not um that is not automatically um tag as present po, no? So you have to write your answer together with your name and your cluster. So the question here is, it is said that because teachers are overloaded with work, they usually frown on the conduct of research. Reflect on the consequences of this attitude. What can be done to prevent this? Write your reflections in the comment section below. So that's the end of our discussions for today. So to sum it up lang all our discussions, research in child and adolescent development helps us understand how children grow, um, learn and change, and how we as teachers can better guide them. So, by engaging in research, we become more reflective, analytical, and open to continuous learning and improving. So, however, research must always be done ethically and responsibly. So, especially when involving children. So we must follow principles from the NEYC and the Data Privacy Act of 2012 to ensure that we protect the rights and the privacy of all the participants. So ultimately, doing research allows us as teachers not only to improve their teaching, but also to grow as professionals and lifelong learners. So, research po talaga is very important because we help shape better learning experiences and in the process become better educators ourselves. So thank you very much for listening to our lesson 3 discussion, and may we all continue to learn, to question, and grow for the benefit of our learners and our profession. So thank you very much guys for um tuning up with me. So I hope you finish the recorded discussion and please study the lesson 3 and because this is very interesting study. So thank you very much. Bye bye.